All right, good evening, everybody. It is Monday, February 6th, and this is the Personnel Committee meeting. For those listening to the tape recording, we do not have our normal tape recorders, so we're improvising. So if it sounds a little bit different, that's why. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's then get a roll call here, starting with Mr. Martino, and we'll work our way around the table.
Rich Martino.
Connor Kurtz.
Carol Bites.
Bob Hurley. David Harris.
All right, moving right along here. I've included, everybody has a packet at the board table, or at least they should. I'd like to talk a little bit first about the job descriptions that we received a while back and the file that I organized this afternoon. My hope today was to go through and identify those positions that are no longer necessary. We're using this, it's fine. We're sticking with this recorder. We were just posed the option of the standard model for the sake of the record here, if anybody cares. But anyway, the idea behind the job descriptions was that hopefully tonight we'd be able to go through and identify those that are no longer being filled and that have been empty for a while, and we could just recommend a list right on to the full board to abolish those positions that are vacant. However, this afternoon, I was expecting to put a few hours into this, just cross-referencing to see which positions are filled and which are not, but I realized that the file we were provided was just, in my opinion, very disorganized, and I wanted to make sure that we had all the stuff we needed all available, so I organized that folder, and I sent out an updated zipped file to the committee and the administration with a more organized listing of the job descriptions. I also created a spreadsheet that lists every position and indicates its category and subcategory and the dates that the job descriptions were revised. I have shared this spreadsheet with the members of the committee, and I've asked Jim sometime before our next meeting if he could go through and indicate how many staff members fill these positions. For example, how many elementary school teachers, how many school psychologists, just working down the list. And that way we'll have a starting point to determine which positions are vacant. And I've also asked if he sees fit, if he wants to recommend any positions on his own volition for elimination, then he can do that. And then hopefully next meeting we can vote on a list of recommendations and send that on to the full board, and we can clean up that list of job descriptions and those files. So that's that. So it looks like we're going to try to do a recommendation next meeting. I'm going to go through, though, the list of job descriptions. There are a few that within the file we were provided by the administration. There were probably 100 and I think about 100 and maybe 70, maybe 180 job descriptions. However, in addition to the job descriptions, there was a file called Job Descriptions Index.doc. And in that index, it lists a few jobs for which we do not have job descriptions. Those positions are noted in this spreadsheet. However, I'm going to say them now just for the sake of the administration here and the record. Chorus advisor at the middle school is an extracurricular position and it does not have a job description. Instrumental assistant for band front, also extracurricular. Senior chorus and chorale director. United Nations Club Advisor, but we don't need that because that position has been changed to History Club Advisor. Access Coordinator, I could not locate that job description. Clerical/telephone operator, high school. Middle school receptionist/secretary to assistant principal. Secretary, assistant to the superintendent. secretary, assistant to the athletic director, secretary, educational technology director, secretary, high school, and here we go, secretary, superintendent, part-time custodian, district office. So those are a few of the job descriptions that we still need. And again, from the spreadsheet I sent out, those should be identifiable for the administration to get us those job descriptions, and we can sort them into the folder. So on that note, does anybody have any comment from the file we received or anything they'd like to mention on that front? All right, seeing none. Next up, organizational chart discussion. I've included in this packet some organizational charts that two are our own. One's the current organization chart for Daniel Boone Area School District, and the other is proposed by Jim, by Mr. Harris. In addition to the Daniel Boone organizational charts, we have a few from Downingtown, Exeter Township, Pottstown, and then a few different files here from Wilson. So the idea here is that we could just see how other districts structure their administration. We could talk about it. We can compare that to Daniel Boone's current setup and proposed setup. So would anybody like to kick off the discussion here? Maybe Mr. Harris, if you'd like to just take a moment to explain the changes that you're proposing.
The only thing that has to be selected on the proposed, and there's no lines, because I think it's all straight actually. There's a dotted line. There's a direct line to director of athletics to the high school principal. And there's a dotted line to me. So the director of athletics has to report to a building administrator, which is the high school principal. But I include George in all my admin meetings anyway, because he's district-wide, so I put him at that level, but technically he's under Preston at the high school.
Okay.
Currently, if you look at the current chart, it's pretty simple. We already have business manager, building and ground supervisor, director of ed, assistant superintendent, and director of special education. The changes, one would be title changes, which I've talked about. And I've talked to all parties involved, and they were okay with the title changes. Lauren would become CFO. Max would become CTO. And that would really be, other title change would be the current assistant business manager under the CFO concept becomes the business manager. And the proposed position that would handle the non-academic areas, including transportation and maintenance, would be director of operations, which is standard across most. The only new position that is here would be a chief academic officer, which would handle all curriculum, instructional things for schools, where the principals would still be reporting to and evaluated by the assistant superintendent, but the chief academic officer would help also evaluate those facilities. That would be the only change. The athletic trainer still falls under the director of athletics. And that's it. Most of this title change, there is one position.
I have a question on the CFO and business manager. Our policies would probably have to be updated to reflect the changes here, but specifically the job title of business manager, are there certain statutory requirements that the district, like I know in Pennsylvania school districts have business managers, you have a superintendent and you have a business manager, and I believe at least, there's law that indicates that the business manager has to perform certain functions. So I wonder if that's as simple as, I don't know if it's as simple as a title change is what I'm getting at, that the business manager position might have some responsibilities under the law. And if that's the case, then maybe we want to rethink that just with that specific term.
Generally, the business manager is a school-based position. It depends, but generally, the business manager is someone who's based at the school, who does the school payroll, who handles the operational
Okay.
at a school. But it could change, like I'm looking at.
I'm just thinking for the sake of, I'm going to bring it up here.
And it could
Just be aware of, yeah. And even though functionally the chief financial officer is going to perform the functions that the business manager currently performs, it's just something I think we need to be aware of. Because if the law says that the business manager shall do this, and if we have a business manager, then that person will be the one to do that.
Well, and also after Lauren would retire, we would not fill the business manager's position.
Oh,
That would be done away with the CFO with that position. As you recall, Lauren said, once he retires, next year or 18 months now, he wouldn't fill that position. The business director of operations would fall under that position, that office.
yeah, I'm thinking maybe if you make it CFO/business manager or whatever, just business manager can be, we don't need to use that title in our organizational chart for the sake of the law and all that. Maybe this is just to check with Brian if we do move this route,
You said
just
the
to make
Department
sure.
of Ed refers to the duties, the obligations of that functions to,
As the
under the
business
business
manager.
manager. So it seems like that title should stay with the head of the department in some way.
That would all depend
Or
on
is
how
it-
it's written, but like I said, I've seen schools that have,
You have seen this structure.
Okay.
It's semantics. I'm fine with that. It's
I
not-
don't know who this one is, but they have a CFO. And then accounting, facility, inventory, food service, transportation, and print shop, under that person, they have a CFO.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for your administrators, but are you saying that the work that Lauren does and the work that Kathleen does can really be handled by one person?
Well, as I recall, when I first got in, Lauren said if he was younger, I mean, there's a lot of hands-on work.
Because of the efficiencies that he's built into the department now.
No, but I'm asking, are you saying that
That is
there's
what
only
they're
enough work for
saying.
one
Between
person?
him and the director of operations.
Well, as I recall,
For her.
when Michael was still here, we had talked about
Yeah,
when Lauren retired,
We've been talking
not
about that.
replacing Michael as the assistant business manager.
right.
That's what
It's
I-
not
that's
necessary
what I'm
anymore.
following. I'm not saying there's more, but there's different types of work. There's more hands-on accounting work that Michael did, that Lauren oversaw. And I'm just following what we talked about when
Mhm.
Michael was here, Kathleen's here.
This is
Lauren
not a
retires.
surprise. We've been talking about this for a while,
We
yeah.
would replace Michael, so that's what I'm
I have a question. I'm a little bit concerned, I don't know if you are, that we still don't have an HR department. Is that, who's handling that?
We don't hire a lot. We don't have a lot of people passing through. And also, one of the big things that an HR department would do is supportive services. We
Mhm.
contracted out a lot of those supportive
Okay.
services, if not everything. We don't have transportation, we don't have the payroll that Casey used to have to do, because that's now done through
Okay,
DCA.
good.
Food
So, like,
service is done through that company, and
Right.
transportation is out.
what about like employee disputes or, all that stuff that comes down from the Labor Relations Board, make sure these postings are, make sure the employees know their rights, just the hounding that we sort of get from
That's
government.
up to the business office.
Okay, so and they're fine with that, they can manage the relations.
I mean, we don't have, like I said, we take things back. If we had 70 bus drivers, 60 maintenance and custodial people.
Right,
That,
that'd be a bigger
but one of the
piece.
things that came
Good.
off of Casey's
Those are the
job was
efficiencies.
that payroll that he had to submit. You couldn't do that. You don't do it for food service, you do it for custodial and maintenance and
What
transportation.
about employee-on-employee issues? My husband only had a department of like 20 people, and it seemed like he was always intervening with them, sending somebody to, I don't know. Honestly, there was an alcoholic, and there's certain ways that you can handle these issues, so that they're just, following the law. Oh, okay. Can we handle it, look at that stuff anymore?
Rob handles all compliance with the city, legal issues,
So it's an HR half thing. Okay.
Rob does all the postings for the job.
Cool.
I hear
Great.
Mr. Bates advocating for an HR department.
I'm not advocating at all,
Yeah, we
Mr.
would pay for
Martino.
it.
I beg to differ. I'm not advocating
not.
at all.
We're not.
I'm expressing a concern that I have that I don't see in the chart, that I see
Curious
in
how you would pay
organizational
for it
chart.
if we had one.
So I stay corrected, okay? I'm not advocating for anything. I'm questioning the chart.
Okay.
Well, I am going to advocate for something, and that is as chief academic officer. This is something that's come up in CNI a lot, and I mentioned it at this meeting. I mean, looking at the curriculum changes that should be happening in the district, but we just don't have the I want to use the right word here. I was going to say talent, but I don't think that's it.
Expertise?
Not even expertise, and it's a combination of all of these things: talent, expertise, structure, time. I think time is the big thing. There aren't. There just are a lot of things that I think need to happen on the curriculum front that aren't happening, and our function is to educate. Our function isn't to provide athletic teams. Our function isn't. I mean, we do need the finance and all that. We need the business office, but I think that there are some things happening, especially with this transition to iPads. If we're gonna do that, there are a lot of things that will need to be vetted. A lot of new policies will need to be enacted, procedures, and just thinking about how streamlined our administration already is. I don't want to pull it too much harder. I don't know where that.
I tend to lean
But
with you. Would this be like a slide though, like business manager, the business manager position?
So
The pay allotted for the business manager, if that's going away, would that justify the chief academic officer pay? Is that what we're thinking here? Or
Well,
the new position,
the new position is one of the ones that I have, the only new position proposed.
well, and then once
and is the
well,
is the salary a wash, I guess is what I'm asking, roughly, or are you thinking?
it'll be once the changes, once Mr. Small retires, and that position goes away, then it'll be a net zero. You won't be adding any new
That's what I'm
positions,
asking.
right?
Is
Yeah.
that what we're thinking? Yeah.
Now, unless it determines that we have to hire an assistant business manager again or an assistant CFO,
That's why.
but we wouldn't. So instead, you're saying you're going to trade the assistant business
Kinda trade,
manager for a
yeah.
chief academic officer. Okay,
When
eventually.
do you want to establish the chief academic officer?
I'll have to talk to Rob, right? I mean, we have, if you build the one-to-one computing, curriculum has to be done, the work has to be done.
No, but what I'm asking you is you want to establish that before you lose the assistant business manager, correct?
You'd wait.
I mean, if I had to, yeah, I mean, I don't have a choice financially. I haven't asked, because I've been here for more money. I haven't asked for more bodies at all.
Right.
I've tried just to move people and do what I could with what I had. Like, we never, when Rob and I talked, we never talked about what we need to go back and ask for 2% more. We said, what do we have? How can we
Yeah.
work with it?
Yep.
So that's,
The assistant business manager makes, from memory, around $75,000.
right,
What would you pay the chief academic officer?
100,000.
So there is an increase.
But through this, there are other jobs that are going away.
Right.
I mean, like the assistant principal at BDC, the job probably go back into the classroom. Of course, you have the job probably go back into the classroom.
Something that I've noticed, having served on this board now for 6 years and having chaired the curriculum and instruction committee for 4 of those years, is just how so much of the innovation, as I see it in the district, is being pushed by that committee specifically. And I'm not taking credit for that. It's the members of that committee and the board ultimately for going along with those ideas of the administration. I'd love to see a staff person take that initiative and put forward some of these innovations on their own. But even aside from that, the changes that are going to come with going to one-to-one, if that's what the board opts to do. I mean, we're talking about using open source software to teach these classes. I mean, when we have textbooks, those textbooks are vetted not only by Pennsylvania, but also by the states, by Texas, by California, by these major purchasers. Like, there's a lot of eyes on those textbooks. But if we're going to be using open source software, I don't want to call it the Wild West, but there's less regulation, which is good and bad. But we're going to have people internally making sure that that material is appropriate for our classrooms. So these are all just things to consider, I guess. Like I said, I'm an advocate for this position. To hear, yeah.
One other question on this. The director of operations right now, is that a position we have?
That's the position that Tamara asked for. It was a tweaking of the current facilities, building and grounds.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah, I'm not,
because all those people are gone.
great, right.
So it rolled
That's
into
where that's more things
it
too,
rolled
too.
into all the
Uh-huh.
other things.
managing the contracts.
Right, and Lauren and I, we
And
played around with the name of
transportation.
it. We either called it a contract coordinator, or
I got it.
could be a director of operations, but
Nice.
more falls under that.
Perfect.
More-
Yeah,
more
I
the
like that.
non-academic stuff.
Okay, I wasn't picturing it under the business office, but I like it
Right,
better.
because it
Good.
deals with all the contracts, it deals with all the non-academic stuff, and all the purchase orders, and everything. It's directly aligned to the business.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Harris, because you spent this time compiling these organizational charts, I just want to take for a second a moment to appreciate, and if you can provide some insight into this, of the districts you provided, one of which at least, that is Pottstown, has a very similar student enrollment to our enrollment, and a similar budget, although theirs is increased at an accelerated rate, more accelerated rate compared to ours. How would you characterize our administration, the size, the expense, all of these things, compared to the districts that you looked at? Like, just looking at some of these organizational charts, I mean, Wilson, it looks like they have an administration that's 4 times the size of Daniel Boone's. Pottstown's looks like it's also about double the size, at least.
I just came from the area, Pottstown, I talked to him, Superintendent Derrick, he said that this is his draft, so where since MP is a new position, they're near us, at the same size, however, their demographic and financial makeup is the opposite of ours, so they get a lot of state funding also, so their budget is probably about $10 million more than us.
Yeah, and excuse me, allow me to correct myself here. I was looking at the Exeter Township, or the, what was the other one? Downingtown, I think. Yeah, I was looking at Downingtown, and I said Pottstown, but Pottstown does look to be, it does look to have a larger administration when you look at these individual positions, but not at
Downingtown
the
the
scale that
unlabeled one?
Downingtown has. Downingtown is unlabeled. Yeah.
Lawrence Mussolini,
Yeah.
That's
what was your question on that?
My question was just, can you characterize the size of our administration compared to these other districts? Like, I just think it's,
But I wasn't trying to duplicate any of
Right,
these
yeah.
other districts.
I just think while we're talking about, I want to reflect on, or just note, at least here for the committee and for anybody listening, how small our administrative team is. And that's not to say we should grow it for the sake of growing it,
Right.
but
Right.
we have really,
More streamlined.
streamlined is one word to use, but I think it's a testament in many ways to the board for keeping these positions in check and not letting the administration grow like some of these other districts. But that being said, when
I
it
think-
does need to grow,
I think quite the contrary. I think it's a tribute to our administrators wearing all these hats. Like, Director of Human
Right.
Resources has 4 hats: staffing, labor relations, benefits, and payroll. And we're just saying.
well, it's
that-
collaborative, absolutely.
that
But
has
I'm just
gone
thinking
up
when we
Mr.
talk
Hurley
about
for the
adding,
most part.
when we talk about adding a new
Biggest
position,
compliment.
I think we need to keep in mind how we've really been
Yeah.
operating very, very efficiently here for the last, I don't know how many years, but
I'm in a district that had a board secretary and a superintendent secretary. And I've been with districts that had the same person does both. I've found the ones that are groups like Downingtown are really efficient.
yeah.
One person does one report all day, they just do one thing all day.
Right.
They kind of wander around the rest of the day. Other people,
Yeah.
and other
Yeah.
people, the talent level isn't as high because you can find someone who handle hymns all day.
Hmm.
That's not year round or all
Yeah.
day. So sometimes they just find they have the money to go spend
Yeah.
it. Where on our side, in some of the smaller districts, we can get by. But now, it would be nice if we had pump seasonally sometimes,
Yeah.
like special ed gets in a season of reporting. Or for
Right.
example, the kindergarten enrollment time. Okay, we don't have a kindergarten enrollment coordinator.
Right.
Like Downtown did that.
Right.
Because we don't have that rush of students coming in only for a few months of the year. It's like Macy's at Christmas. We ramp
Exactly.
up after Halloween, and then after Christmas, they scale back down to their usual. Look.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking, I mean, I
That's a
just
good
think these things
analogy.
are easy to find in the local, but
Right.
I'm not trying to copy down
No.
anyone else or Exeter. Some of these, I think they're kind of, there's so many layers, you're never getting done.
Yeah,
And you're so disconnected from what's happening.
yep, it's real
So,
fact.
I mean, Rob and I were on a school bus the other day,
Mm-hmm.
correcting discipline
Oh,
at the middle school, you know, so sometimes you get too disconnected, you don't know what's going on. But this, what I propose is really just the basics of what we would need adding to the curriculum and refocusing our grounds and building course and focus more on the overall operation picture, not just the grounds and buildings.
okay.
Yeah, I commend you. I think it's great. I think it's a great vision. I like the thought that went into it.
Anything else on organizational chart discussion? All right, moving on. Committee calendar discussion. I had mentioned at the first meeting last month of this committee that I want this ad hoc committee to be an ad hoc committee, and I don't want it to exist in perpetuity like some other committees. And I'm looking at Mrs. Bites. To that end, I tried to taking the priorities that we discussed last meeting and looking at the email that I had sent to Mr. Wolf when I proposed this committee and some things that could work on. I tried to take those ideas and put them into a calendar that isn't set in stone by any means, but that I'd like to use as a guide moving forward, just so we can stay on track and so we can really finish this up in a year like I had hoped to accomplish. That agenda is included in the packet that I provided, or proposed calendar. We're already a little bit off from where I wanted to be because I was hoping we could make a recommendation, at least in terms of abolishing some of these vacant positions tonight. So I'd like to push that to March. But this is just a rough outline of where I'd like to go. And if anybody has any additions they'd like, please voice them. If you have them now, if they occur to you later, you can send me an email, or we could. Like I said, this isn't set in stone, but I would like to close this committee out when we're ready, and hopefully we'll be ready within the year.
Just what you're saying about the ad hoc committee, I mean, we just had a safety and security committee meeting, and I think the committees would kill themselves simply by running out of things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And the safety and security stuff that we discussed, if we can get what we discussed implemented by the fall,
Yeah.
unless something new comes up, there'd be nothing else to
Really
talk
dragging
about.
it out.
Right.
Question, would it make sense to look at the jobs through area, like the operations first? Because we do have them outsourced, contracted out. It would be a lot quicker to go
Right.
through. I mean, you could just 200 jobs, you could knock out, call it 60 of them, just right there, that would still be on the maintenance.
Yeah.
Those positions, like the support side that we don't really have anymore, we could knock those out along, and then narrow it down,
Well, I mean, I think those are obvious that we're going to knock them out. I mean, when I was putting these in, there's probably 60 positions. I mean, custodian, cafeteria, that we've now contracted.
Am I wrong?
So-
Aren't we, or isn't the administration going to make those recommendations for which to be knocked out?
Yeah.
You're pretty much
I'm
going to do
just
it
saying, if
anyway.
we look
Handle
at
it anyway.
the category for the operation.
Yeah.
Well, I think it should be, I mean, with that spreadsheet that I put together, I mean, by next meeting, I'm thinking there are some we're going to need to talk about. And how I see it, if a position has been vacant for 5 years, the job, like, I think we need to, if we decide that we have a need for a new position, then we should craft that job description to,
As needed.
well, to relate to that need that needs to be
Right.
filled. So I think that really, if we aren't using the job descriptions now, then there's not a need at the moment. And if a need arises, then we should write that. We don't need to delete the job descriptions. We can go back and reference them, but I just want to get them off of the books
I kind
as
of agree.
empty. And to that end, I really think as soon as we get those numbers in, how many folks are in the position now, if that number is 0, then we know that that position is unfilled, and we just need to see if it's in the process of being filled, and if that's the case, then we don't abolish it. But if it is not, then I say we abolish that position, keep the job description on file, but just get it off of the list of jobs that are
Yep.
active, if you will. So I mean, however you guys want to tackle it, but my hope is by next meeting we can have that list, just so we can advance it to the full board. But you did mention something there about our contractors. Seeing as those employees are not our employees, I didn't think necessarily to include them within, it doesn't fall within the scope of this committee to discuss those services. That being said, is there an interest in comparing where we were before versus where we are now?
Comparing in what way?
Jobs or the services that GCA, for example, is providing versus what our own people did internally, like just to make sure that we're happy with the
My opinion is, go
standard.
back to your chart, I mean, we have a list of positions that are on the books that aren't filled.
right.
So we really need to know that unless we're intending to fill them, that
Yeah.
they're abolished.
Yeah,
need to
right.
know
I'm talking about something a little bit different, though.
What their position?
I'm trying to figure, yeah,
If
if
they
there are
have the-
people who are operating, we don't need to know the positions or the job descriptions, but just to make sure, like, are there, like, we hear a lot in our board updates that there are certain activities at this is a distinct conversation from the abolishment of vacant positions. I'm talking about at the high school, for example, are the floors being swept?
Yeah, I don't
And if
think
that- you don't think so?
contract management. I don't think
Okay.
that comes under the scope of this committee at all.
You don't think the contracts?
Personally.
Okay, all right, that's fine, just thought I'd ask.
And I do agree those positions should be more or less abolished, and not that they can't be, leave the descriptions out there in case we ever have to go back to
Yeah.
them, but for now, they should be off our books.
Okay. So, I mean, let's at least now look ahead while we have this calendar here toward our next meeting. I'd like us to go through, and of the job descriptions we have and the ones that we're going to be provided that weren't in that file, if there's any overlap that we see as members of this committee, functions that are being duplicated, really to identify this, we'd have to rely on our expertise as board members, as having participated in the functioning of this district now for at least 3 years, some of us longer. Alternatively, we could, if you're interested on your own time, if you want to pull up these job descriptions and compare, like if there are two that seem pretty similar to you, and you look and you notice that some of the job duties do overlap, I was hopeful that we could have a discussion on that next meeting if there are, if the board members identify anything or if the committee members identify anything. Next up, I'd like to just organizational chart. If there's any further discussion on that.
There's one thing, what about the position that's hanging out there in regular operations, that job description's been done? It's been with the facilities committee, I don't know. if
Leave it out there.
we've seen it here. We're gonna have to make a decision
It'll
on
say
that.
zero, right?
I'm sorry, no,
It's gonna show zero, because nobody's in it. But we still wanna leave that on the books.
I'm saying the duties under that position have to be filled for our routing and transportation. That job is currently running. So that has to be improved if we're not gonna do it. We have to find a way to get the routing done. So if we're bringing the routing in-house,
Yeah.
that was the solution.
I don't think it needs to come through, I think we continue to follow the procedure as we followed before when it comes to adding new positions or all of that, and this committee, we're just really reviewing and suggesting changes. Does that answer your question? So we don't need to see that, we don't need to approve that position, but the job description, if it's going to be the job description for the next however long, like, I'd prefer to see I'd rather work with the future than work with the past, if that makes sense.
Jim,
So-
my understanding
Yeah, I'm not sure
about that transportation position was that this director of operations was gonna do that one.
Yes, but we've never approved that job description. I mean, facilities had it. Tamara asked me.
It's never been brought to the.
So that has to go
Right.
normal channel.
Right.
That has to go through the full
Is
board.
that gonna go through facilities or through this, now that it's personnel? I would have thought that it would go through personnel.
I don't see, like,
This
if we were a
is
standing personnel
temporary,
committee,
yeah.
I'd say yes, but our function or our goal really is only to review and make changes. Like, I had the same thought where we talked about this with the policy committee back when it first started. There were some questions on the board. Would proposed policies originate in the policy committee and then rise up to the full board? And the consensus and the resolution of the board was that no, and the policy reflects this. The administration will propose, or superintendent specifically, will propose new policies to the board, and the board will take action, and the policy review committee is only there to review the policies. And I'm kind of looking at this committee
Yeah,
the same
I
way.
think
We're
you're
only
saying the same
reviewing.
thing. A new position should go to the
But a
full
new-
board. It should go right up to the full board, right?
First, like C&I, and then it was determined it was committee recommended to the board.
And in this
It's
case, that
already been done
committee,
Make a
by
new
the
position.
facilities
Right.
committee, correct? It's been discussed.
It's been discussed back and forth. I know your opinion. I
Let
know-
me ask
I'll
you a
take it right
question
up to the
about
board.
both that position and the chief academic officer that is part of this committee, I think. Are they gonna be bid and awarded to the best qualified?
I would like to. I mean, I always, when we talk, I say post everything.
I think they should be.
I say post everything.
I mean, you're awarding a decently paid salary to a job position. I'd want the best qualified for every position we get.
Yeah, if we're creating a new position, I think it needs to be filled like a new position.
Okay.
That's my view at least, and I'd say that falls within the purview of this committee because we're going to talk about hiring at some point in our hiring procedure. So,
And back to the chief academic officer, you and I had discussed this before, months ago. The only thing I'd want to hear before the full board votes on the position is what's not being done that's going to be done by this position. I mean, you're talking $100,000. I'd like to know what it's going to accomplish.
right. And that'll be good, and even if you could get that, for me as the chairman of the CNI committee, I'd prefer to know that sooner rather than later, not specifically regarding this position, but just to know what to be on the lookout for in terms of areas that we might be not really where we should be in terms of things that are being done or not being done. But again, looking forward to next month, and maybe this is unnecessary, especially if maybe we can cover it tonight even, but what we view, and Mrs. Bites touched on this when she asked about a human resources person, how we conceive or what we conceive of when we think of an ideal school district, and when we think of where Daniel Boone is right now, and knowing our constraints and all that, what are the gaps that we'd like to fill? And I think we heard, because I had questions too about human resources, but hearing your response, Jim, made me think that, we don't need a dedicated person necessarily, especially now that we've contracted so many of these services to the private sector. I do think that the academics, we have some gaps there, but that was something I wanted to discuss in March. But if anybody has any thoughts now, we can just get that over with. Are there any other areas of the school district operation where
Jim had a job description written for the chief academic officer. I don't know if he's updated that recently, but
I can send it to you.
okay, great. But even beyond that, are there
Actually,
any?
go to the full board too, then.
Well, if it's
Should
going to
both
be,
new positions?
well, when it's time to make them a position, but right now it's just kind of for our own edification, if you will.
yeah,
The only
everything's
other-
got to be voted on by the full
Right.
board.
The only other area I often longed for, pardon me, yearned for is Director of Public Relations. I am seeing that more and more. But it's certainly not a priority right now. And maybe after things settle down, maybe somebody can take that piece where they actually control the messaging better. Like Springford hired they had a contractor and it was like $37,000 a year for a contractor. They ended up hiring her because she was doing such a great job. She took over the website and did the regular newsletter and things like that, press releases. And I know we're doing those
Well,
things.
something
internally.
interestingly, even about Pottstown, they hired something at a rate like I think it was $50,000. Maybe it was a little bit more, maybe it was a little bit less. They have a social media person,
Yeah, exactly.
so they have somebody operating district social media accounts, and this is because. And I'm not. I don't want to advocate
I know,
for that.
me either. I just want to make sure it's covered.
We have that covered by myself, Scott, Lisa. We handle that. Pottstown, districts that have that generally have a perception problem. Now, we have issues from time to time. But Pottstown has the Pottstown Mercury sitting in their backyard. Waiting for something to happen. And Scott handles our website. Like I said, once again,
Yeah, he
you
does.
deal with certain districts where they have a person being paid X amount of dollars to do what they're doing.
Right.
So we got it covered. Now, if we started having, we got it covered.
Well, it's just to keep the
Yeah.
messaging pro. Like at Spring City, for some reason, maybe you want to talk to them. They hired that girl. They loved it. They loved her materials and whatever she was.
It also, I think, depends on the size of the
And they're a
district.
good district. They're a good district. They're
If you have a,
accomplished in so many ways, but they decided it was important to keep that messaging positive. It kind of beats down instead of waiting for the fire and then putting out the fire. I think it's a proactive approach. And I'm not suggesting we do it now. It's just always in the back of my mind.
Well,
Is that
this year,
something?
we started doing press releases. bi-weekly.
And you're doing it.
Yeah.
So if you can manage it, I'm,
Preston, if something at the high school, we get a press release, we push it out, we're starting to push information out.
we've got good messaging going on, and the principals also, have
Dane does
Facebook
it.
with their, yeah.
Well,
So
that's
we do seem
important,
to
I
have it
think,
covered.
at least in terms of the press
Think about it.
releases, because sometimes I feel, especially having worked on the CNI committee, we put forward these ideas, and so many of them become part of the district and are enacted. And they're good changes. You even look at the AP classes. We went from being very one of the worst districts in the county in terms of our AP offerings to one of, if not the best. And when I think about the stuff that comes forward at public meetings for members of the public, where there's still this perception that we're cutting everything, or this district is somehow subpar, when I look at the reality versus the perception, there is a significant gap there. And I don't want to say that just the few people who come to our meetings are representative of the community, because I don't think they are. I think the board is, but not necessarily all the comments we hear. But on that messaging, I think there is some truth in what Mrs. Bites is saying. I agree with her that we shouldn't hire a person now.
If it's
but
done, and you know
something-
what, one of my concerns about getting on this committee was, if, when we get to the point where we're doing job descriptions, I guess we're gonna get that, could we make sure that whatever piece, with this model that we have now, that we get it codified? We have it in every principal's job description, that they will maintain their Facebook, not that they may, but they will. You know what I mean, make sure that the messaging supersedes the person in that position. Same with you. If you're doing press releases, I think that should be in the job description of the superintendent. And whoever's handling the website, I would just like to I would feel comforted knowing that we got all these tasks that everyone's doing, and we got things so right now.
Well,
that it gets codified.
and that's something that we've had in this district, what I consider an issue, of employees who either go beyond the bounds of their job, and then when they leave, we have an issue
Right.
getting things done just
Right.
because they've assumed more
We've seen that.
responsibilities.
We've
Oh,
seen
we
that
see it
so
all the
much.
time.
It's like with the enrollment reports, when that employee left, so did that task.
Right.
We need it.
So that's why I think if anything, if there's any overarching
Continuity.
theme, if there's any theme though that from this committee and our work, I hope it's that we need to operate working with positions and not people. Assume that the person who's the incumbent in that position, let's say they won't be the incumbent tomorrow, what does that position
Right,
need to do?
Right, that's where I would like to see the outcome of this committee get
It's
us
also
to.
why I talked about best qualified,
Yeah,
because the person now filling the position should be able to do the job.
right.
Now, one of the drawbacks of being our size, if Shelley gets pneumonia for 2 months, we don't really have a backup to that. When you're running lean mean,
Yep.
nimble, when someone goes out, it doesn't stop, but it slows.
What would we do? Could we get a consultant? Could we hire somebody with her?
We would probably go through the IU, and just like when Mary Beth Kiesel had left for a while, her position gets absorbed into everyone else's, and everyone just kind of manages along until when I see her coming back, we'll keep it rolling, but it's not running as efficient. It's kind of like if your car throws a
Firing
rod or a
6
cylinder or
cylinders,
something,
yeah.
and it's running a little rough. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna run a little rough for the next few weeks.
Well,
until-
on that note, though, thinking
That's a
about some
decision we
other,
make by
well,
running
thinking
lean
about
mean.
some other districts, though, like how do we cultivate our talent? Is there somebody who works in Shelley's department who could be a
Right.
future special ed director? Is there somebody, for example,
Should
even
be
in the
going to those
business
training
office?
classes.
Well,
Somebody else
I-
should be training for her.
I think that's another area
duties.
where, in terms of employee satisfaction, if we know that there are employees within our ranks that aspire to be more than their current position, whether they're ready, we're not saying they need to be ready now to assume that job, but if they show an ambition to learn more, to take on more responsibility, then I hope that we are mentoring them.
Directly mentoring
Yeah.
them.
Well, when we just skip the special ed for a while, yeah, we have people for that, but when they go to training, we have to get a sub, because we don't have a backup for what they do.
Yeah.
So I'm not making excuses, I'm just saying.
No, right.
Right, that's the reality of
When
it.
we don't have, let's go back to football, we don't have people on the bench. Like the Eagles this year, their center, their snapper got hurt, broke his arm or something. They had a replacement. He got hurt during the game. They were like, we don't have another
Now the
snapper.
other report, yeah.
Because we're not
The
3, 4
snappers
deep.
didn't
So
carry.
they're asking, who wants to snap the ball? You had 4 guys over there practicing snapping the ball before the game. And what they did was they didn't punt anymore or do field goal because they didn't have a long snap. So that's our situation. They were like, we're stuck. We don't have 3 snappers.
But on that note, isn't there required education every year for the guidance department? Like teachers, whatever, for Act 83 credits, so can't we direct them into their training? When they have to take that mandatory training, can't we direct them into learning the duties of the position, of
Yeah, but
Shelley's
if they
position?
don't want to do the job,
Right.
you're not getting.
Right.
We can't make them?
Because they're union. No, we can't make it.
Well, I'm only saying, no, and I think Mrs. Bites' point,
Cultivate
if there's
that.
somebody, how I see what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, let's say they have to participate in a certain X amount of training per year. If you know that employee Y is very interested in one day being in his supervisor's position, then can you dedicate that mandatory training that they have to do anyway to being something that could
Yeah,
give
be
them the
beneficial
skills that could be beneficial to
that
the.
redundancy that we're looking for in the district.
Well, that would be beneficial not only to the employee who would do this, who would want to do this, but also to the district, because they'd give us a farm team, if you
But
will.
what about incentivizing?
Jim, I'll give you an example, and you weren't here, but Rob, you were. Before she got promoted, we knew Megan Weber wanted to move up into administration. And I think upward mobility training is a worthwhile investment. And as Connor said about identifying people that want to move up, one of the biggest drawbacks is that many of our teachers make more than our administrators. Seriously, Rob, you're laughing, but it's true.
Right.
So why aspire to take a pay cut?
But we have a principal who wants to be superintendent. And I said, okay, well, the state information came down. I sent it to her, I said, hey, go for it. Because I can't leave my building. Because I'm here. So I agree. I encourage you. Come on in, do a project, work with us.
Yeah.
And this district is unique because if you look at all of these, one of the things you don't see are principals sitting on the leadership team. We have that. Principals are part of the leadership team.
Well, we see them, they're part of the board even at times, these committees. We, in CNI, they're sitting at this table with us
Right.
now.
And a lot of districts, there's like a gap. So we're attracted to certain people who want to come here, maybe be a principal, because they're part of the leadership team. Where if you go to Reading or Cochrane
Right.
or Gallup, you're so
It's
far
far
removed.
removed from it,
You're
right.
being told what to do.
Right.
We're here, Dane, Preston, Melanie, Megan,
Right,
they all have a
right.
voice.
Right.
And we agree together what we're going to
Right.
do. So that's unique. to here.
Well, but getting back to my
It's
point,
nice to
that
hear,
wasn't
though.
exactly
Yeah.
what I was saying as far as having a person aspire for that position, because I've actually heard people in this district saying it's futile to want to do it in this district because Shelley's, it's one position to be the head of, and Shelley's not going anywhere. So but I'm just saying like pieces of what she does, like how to hold, and I don't know if this is valid or not, how to hold a good IEP meeting with parents, right? Say that's training offered by the BCRU, and that's something that only Shelley does well, because I think we've heard that there was a drop ball on one of those. How about we incentivize somebody in that department to start to train, to take that training? If
Incentivize
they,
how? Pay them?
give them a bonus. If you can't ask them to take it.
Well, no,
identify
I see it.
let me
Okay, I'll let you
the
finish.
thought. So identify the skills, the areas of expertise that Shelley has that we're deficient in the district, and find the training and encourage people to, match the people to the training and ask them, and if they won't, then incentivize them. Give them a couple $100 bonus if they would use their Act 83 credits or whatever. I'm not sure if it's a reality, I'm just.
To your
just-
point on that specific example, we're actually training our principals on exactly that as a
that's
result of what happens.
Oh, good.
that,
That's good.
We're actually bringing our top learners actually coming in, and he's going to be a workshop.
So that's just.
But we're not-
one
we're
thing
not-
that I'm aware of.
That is not our teachers though either.
We're
That's
not paying them extra though.
No.
for that. Oh, good, okay.
That's
'cause
great,
that's-
that's even a better way to do it.
Well, no, I mean, I disagree.
Whatever we could do to get that training in-house.
I
Get other
disagree.
people
You see, I
trained.
disagree here. I'm going to say why. I think that the incentive needs to be for these people that they want to do this on their own. That needs to be the driving force here. And I see if we're going to offer monetary incentives, then that becomes the purpose. Oh, I don't want to do this training, but hey, they're going to give me $500
Okay with that. What's the difference if we have the expertise in the
Because I don't
district
think-
when Shelley's out? We're saying if Shelley was out for a month or two, how do we cover everything?
Yeah,
We
but
don't-
I'll give
we
you a
don't
reason
need-
why it doesn't work. We pay Connor Kurtz $500 to go to this training. And then Shelley's out and Connor says, I don't want to do that. And back to Rob's point, he's union, we can't make it.
Well, if it's not a reality, if it's not practical to move those tasks around within the guidance department, then it is a bad idea.
Anyway, we're getting a little bit off track. Good conversation, though. Just if anybody has any items that aren't reflected on this proposed calendar, please let me know because I'd like to add them and work them into the logical order that I hope to follow.
I do have a thought about the organization chart.
Yeah.
And understand, I am the least skilled word member when it comes to computers. I could not do this, but whenever these positions are approved and this is drawn, it should be drawn. This looks like the principals report to each other. This needs to be drawn so each principal is linked to your position. I mean, it's just drawn wrong for an organization chart.
Yeah, they should be
Yeah.
fanned out, yeah. It is tricky to do it. Can I add one more thing about one of the upcoming goals?
Please.
The salary cap, I talked to Pazzo about that, how does this district implement it? They said basically it has to be done through your policies. It's a long time coming, but you can actually define them in your policies somehow. And they said that we should talk to our solicitor about how to go about it. Obviously, it's not something you can do mid-contract, but it's something, each time your contracts renew, they said,
You can work it in there.
once the policies are in place, they have to be compliant. So I
Oh.
don't know if it's something that the administration would want to start looking into now with if the committee would want them to start looking into it with our attorney.
Well, I think we should wait until it's on when it comes up on the calendar.
I disagree.
Oh, okay.
You have Act 93, I think that's where we start. And we could talk to Brian Suvers about that at the next executive session.
When is the Act
About
93
starting.
agreement up?
It runs in this
When is the
calendar,
deadline?
it runs school year, doesn't it?
Yeah, every
Oh.
year there's a meeting, like there's
So it's coming up. this-
Okay,
this
well then we'll
December.
prioritize that. I didn't realize, I wasn't
So
aware
we'd
of
have
that
to ask
structure.
Brian how to go about it.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a good start. I mean, determining what the top salaries are for that before we determine what the,
Yeah.
It could be a
Worker
10-year
positions are-
process, as I understand it.
And I think, and even when I look at different jobs in government around the country, mainly at the municipal, or even at the federal level, they tell you that the range for the position is, I don't know, 60,000 to 120,000. Normally, it's not that wide, that range, but $80,000 to $100,000.
Right.
You know that if you're in this position, not to expect less than 80 and not to expect more than 100. And how it works is you reach 100 after working for 15 years. So it's
Right,
step
right.
basing. It's not.
Right.
That structure is helpful.
Well,
And
that's
it also is fair, I think, to the employees because they know, hey, if I want to make 110,000, it's not going to happen in this position.
Right, exactly.
And I say you can even reflect these ranges, maybe not in the job descriptions because, they're tied to inflation and all that. And some years you're going to have to increase by 1% or whatever.
So do we want the administrators to start working on that?
I say yeah. So if we can get that to go for the Act 93 agreement, we'll move that up and we'll prioritize it, get it talked
It's going to take a
about.
lot of discussion in this
Oh, yeah,
committee.
it's gonna be
That's gonna take
a
lot
big
of
change.
discussion.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is,
I think-
people would understand, and there are companies that do this, including Vanguard, where Jeff Scott works, that when you reach the maximum for your position, you have two choices. You either move to a better paying position, or you know that your end of year, you could get a bonus, but you're not getting a salary increase.
Right.
Well, on that note, since we're going to prioritize that discussion, I have it included here as a subset of a discussion on staff pay. And I thought that would be helpful, I know we approved the teacher contract recently, but just how our pay across the board compares in different sectors. So we have professional teacher, we have, now that we've contracted out so many services,
We want a
It's probably
study
not
of
as
that
relevant.
across the district?
I wouldn't call it a study necessarily, but just how, looking at where we fall in the, when we look at state, for example, are we in the 50th percentile? Are we in the 10th percentile? Are we in the 80th
I think that
percentile?
would be like a business office study.
Sure, we
that
can
would-
call it whatever we want, but I just think that would be helpful. It's not going to affect any changes in decisions at
I
this
think that's a
moment in time.
great idea, to have them
But-
start working on it.
The reason I'm asking that, I intend to discuss it in this committee, but I want to know if we should keep all the pay conversations kind of together, or if we should specifically pull out the salary cap idea. Maybe it doesn't matter. Or maybe I'm trying to plan too much.
That sounds like semantics.
All right.
But I'm not getting it.
Well, I will work on, I'll just make
I
that
think it's
decision
good to
then.
start giving the administration a lot of time to
Right.
start gathering these things,
That's a
knowing
point
that it's
too.
coming.
So, I
We
mean,
don't need it
hearing-
tomorrow, we
right.
need it, for a June discussion maybe.
Well,
but-
hearing things that we're interested in terms of information from the administration, a priority for us is to figure out the salary range that we want to do, looking first with the Act 93 folks, or, excuse me, Act 93 positions.
Cap, then you're saying, not range. Cap?
Well, I say range. You have the base salary, which nobody
Okay,
would be
okay,
paid less
so
than.
a range cap,
And
okay.
then,
Okay.
right.
I misunderstood that.
You might, and
I
it's
thought you
up to
meant what's it
you're the
ranging in
committee
the
chair, but you might also
state.
want to think about when you're going to discuss that, inviting Dave Rathke. He's the finance committee chair, and he's the negotiations chair, who's going to be involved with the Act 93 employees.
Right.
One of the things that really, I think, and Rob could talk to this, is allowing us to have a range when we go to hire.
Mhm.
Because one of the things we look at right now are education level experience. And then that's a number, it's a formula. Sometimes you get these, and they call them rock stars or superstars, where you're trying, we're getting competitive now.
Hmm.
And say we have to find a physics teacher or a band person, a hot band person in the area.
Mhm.
Can we bring that person in at this range? And generally, that's in professional.
We did that last year when you wanted to hire that
Yeah,
math teacher.
to you guys' credit, we had a math teacher, which we were very pleased with, and it was a really high qualified candidate. You guys allowed him to
Right,
that
just
person.
flexibility within
You
this
guys
range.
thought
Yeah.
it
Well, when we're done with
spot.
this and we have job descriptions for all these positions that we keep, wouldn't that be viable to have a range for each,
No, he's
assigned to
talking
each
about teachers,
position?
basically.
That would-
It's teachers, because it's a formula that's done right now, where I could say, okay, we have a teacher with a bachelor's and 12 master's credits with 3 years' experience. It's a formula, and that's the rate of pay right there.
No, I think that's
I like the range.
I think it's important because it tends to be that when you hire a teacher, you have that teacher for that teacher's career. So you need to make sure you get quality people.
Yeah, but I see what Jim's saying, I think. Our matrix says, you have a master's, whatever, you're slotted, you're right
You're
here.
right there.
What you want is the ability to hire the higher paid person.
Or move some within that range. Or maybe someone's not that great, and we can.
But
go
I'm saying
forward.
it's not a range because the matrix dictates
And you know, I
what they,
mean,
what they
Yeah.
make.
this would have to be a future contract discussion then, because if that matrix is, excuse me, that formula is in the contract essentially, right? You have your table.
Right.
Here's
Yeah,
your
if you have a
bachelor.
master's plus
Here's,
whatever.
yeah.
So your question would be, what happened with Rob last year is he had what he felt was a highly qualified math teacher as opposed to another math teacher who didn't have the same qualifications, would have been paid less because of where they fell into our formula.
One was basically a new teacher. and one
We,
was a
the board,
high
said,
balance
okay,
experienced
hire
teacher.
the higher paid
How do we give
person.
them more money then they don't get their?
No, it was where it was in the matrix, it's where it came out in the matrix.
Right.
So that person came in at, they had like a master's plus.
So they fit the matrix, but
Yeah.
our practice has been to hire them at the very beginning.
So,
But
yeah.
what
Oh,
you're
yeah,
asking
you just,
for,
I know what you're
Like-
saying, yeah.
Jim, it sounds like what you're asking for is to be able to hire the best qualified
Like
again.
getting 1,000 applicants. for
Right,
that.
right.
And so
Oh, these
whoever
math
ran
and
for
science
it-
teachers are being pulled to the private industry, so we have to
Well,
have
hold on, this is,
more.
yeah, I want to make sure we're clear what you're asking for, because there are two possibilities as I see it. One is just what happened, where the person, we weren't offering them anything more than they would have been making, we hired them with their experience and their education.
Hired somebody from.
What I
We hired
hear
the
you,
best person.
right, what I hear you saying, though, is let's say we go to a career fair, and, correct me if I'm wrong here, like, let's say we're advertising a position, we're at the BCIU, or we're at, I don't know, Harvard's education school, and we want to hire a new teacher, and we say, well, here's what the standard rate is, but we'll let you come in, if it's 50,000, we'll hire you for 55,000.
Yes.
That's what you're looking for.
Can't
Okay,
do it.
we can't do
Violates
that.
That's a
contract.
question for the attorney then. if
Well,
that
no,
goes
it's
with
No, it
the
violates
salary
the
caps.
contract.
If you could start to put that into your contracts.
Well, if we can put it in the
Tie it with
contract,
the
then it doesn't
salary cap.
violate the contract, but that's when we have
Yeah, you
another
couldn't even do that
contract.
until the next
Right,
contract.
Right.
oh, absolutely. I'm
So-
fully aware of that.
Those things, though, I mean, I think are the ideas I want to talk about in this committee too. So when it comes time to have a new contract, I don't think any of us will be on the board, but we let them know that, hey, we talked about, talking about a
Because
range.
one of the things that's happening is there's a loss of teachers, so that pool is getting smaller. So when everyone knows that after you become more valuable, if you're a hotshot teacher, you're gonna start shopping routine March, April, and May. You say, okay, highest bidder, come get me. I have 5 years, 6 years experience. I teach whatever, I'm certified in various things, and who's gonna pay? You become a free agent, basically. And I don't wanna get in a bidding war with someone,
Right.
but we could lose
You
people
want to have a little play
because we
in.
don't have any wiggle room.
But that's our
serious.
contract.
Yeah, let's
I'm
think that-
serious. With,
Keep that in mind.
with the Department of Education restrictions on how teachers are evaluated, how do you determine a superstar teacher?
Well,
You know,
I'll be happy to
Especially
jump in on
math.
that.
Please.
No, there's a couple things. First, calling references, calling back to schools, people we know in those schools itself, that helps us. Some teachers who have experience are bringing actual data with them, showing their growth, their PVAS data, which they're not legally required to bring that with them to interview, but like, for example, we have, you guys are aware that we had someone who brought that in, it showed the growth of their students. Obviously, there's interview questions, things like that we go through, but interviews are interviews, we all know what they are. But the reality of it is, how do you know you have a superstar teacher is calling the references and finding out through our connections and
No, I'm asking seriously, because come back to a discussion we had, oh my goodness, a year and a half ago in the library back here, when we asked the administrators to identify the bottom 10%, and they claimed there was no way to do it. Or at least one person claimed there was no way to do it. So you do have data that says who your better teachers are.
We have absolutely data. We have, especially when you look at the ELA, the language arts, and your sciences and your maths, because those are tested subject areas. We have growth data on those individual teachers, which are incorporated into their evaluations, as well as the principals do observations regularly of teachers in their teaching practice. So between those two things, how do you identify? That's how you would do.
Okay.
And we'd be calling administrators and contacts we have, in the districts that the person have.
Well, I
Once
think-
in a while you get lucky and you get one. So-
I want to, talking about hiring for a moment here, the things you just articulated, I'd like, because it's a mystery to me, and I'll tell you an anecdote. I came here to pick up my backpack, which I had left after the last meeting, and in the lobby, I picked up an employment application, just to see what it was like. I figured I'm chairing this committee now, I should know what the form looks like. And for classified staff, or for a secretary position, it asked, what computer software do you have experience using, or what operating system? And the option was Macintosh or IBM.
oh, wow.
Like, I mean, these things are just so
Wow.
old. So, I mean, we have to look at those
Yeah, we
things,
better
but
put
I
that
want
on
to,
our-
even on our website, like, I was speaking to a parent yesterday, and she asked me, well, how are these teachers hired? And there's and they don't know. And really, I'm not entirely sure. So I think on our website, we should include, like, what are we looking for when we hire teachers? How does the process work? Just for the sake of educating our own residents, that the teacher that their student has gone through this process, that they were recently hired, just to demystify the entire experience,
won't we
because
get-
these folks do work for the public.
As we get through this committee and do all job descriptions, won't we see all that? Won't
Well,
that
we're
all
not,
become obvious?
well, we're not doing all job descriptions. The
We're
idea
not?
here is, we're eliminating, we're abolishing the positions that are vacant. And if you identify any positions that you think there's overlap, or you want to talk specifically about a job description, but I don't anticipate.
Eventually, we would get
No,
through all,
I don't want to do it like the
maybe even
policy
desk
committee.
audits.
I don't want to do it like the policy committee where we're just reviewing documents all the time, because I don't think, then we're going to be here for years. I think that if you identify a policy, or, a job description, we can talk about it, absolutely.
Okay, but one way or the other.
But I don't want to do it item by item.
Wouldn't that job description be used to advertise for candidates? I mean, wasn't that how we,
Yeah, when we,
so,
We use a service, a professional service, so you're a teacher, you go, depending on the region of the country you're in, you may go to Top Schools, PA REAP, Indeed, it depends on the region. I know the New England area uses a certain one that isn't used here, that they use school something up in the New England area, we use PA REAP in this area. So if you're a
Besides that,
teacher-
don't teachers have to have specific certifications?
Yeah, and if you're a teacher, you go on PA REAP and it says, okay, these are certifications, and I got them.
Mhm.
And generally, that you're a professional, you're not just jumping in, that's why it's so hard to become a teacher, you just don't jump in and out of it. And then they know to send their FBI clearance, their grade level certifications, and they usually have a portfolio packet already done, and they're ready, they have their 5 references written.
Right.
And that's how it works. If you're not a teacher, you're probably not gonna know how that works. I mean, it's written in the language of a teacher would understand.
Well, the thing is, like, our middle school, for example, what's that called, team, it's set up by teams. So, an opening at the middle school job description for a math teacher would have to include the description about how they interact in the teams. So that job, that middle school math teacher job description should be unique.
We
And
post
that-
it online with.
And that would be, right. So we need to have comprehensive job descriptions for every position that we keep in the district, and that's the information that would be included in the ad.
And we'll put other things in there that we're looking for, like preferred character. You know,
Sure,
like, say we need
right.
to fill, will be obvious, or something, say we need a coach, you know, like if you prefer willingness to coach. or-
Background.
Yeah, something like that. We
If
just-
they're involved with a club or
We just
something
put
too,
it,
you
we
would.
had an advertisement, and one of the things we put is like a preferred, we just filled a middle school, social studies position. One of the things I put in there is we prefer a dual certification, someone who is certified to teach multiple subjects, because that gives you more flexibility at the secondary level, if they can pick up a course here or a class here in a different subject area. So we were, you know, we said preferred, it didn't mean we
Right.
ruled out other people, but that wasn't a characteristic that we were looking at. They had to have a social studies secondary degree, and we were hoping to grab it, someone who had a double cert.
So does that demystify the process for you then, knowing that?
Well, no, I mean, I know enough about how it works. But I just think like the themes that you highlighted, that the people we look for, I think we should put that out on our website and explain. I just think that would be helpful for the public, the question I got was, well, how are these teachers chosen? And I tried to explain it as best I knew it, but I think it's not the first time I heard that question, but.
We don't hire a lot.
Right.
That's the problem, yeah.
Well, it's not
We don't
necessarily,
have that
yeah.
HR office personnel where people
Yeah.
are coming through.
Right
applying.
now.
We don't have that turnover.
Right now. That could change someday.
Right.
So we need to make sure.
So then we wonder, how do I become a teacher? Well, go to school. And like when I first got here, Rob really was an advocate for PA REAP, and that's where the top teachers go in the area. So we got on PA REAP
Right.
to get with that. Instead of just putting it on our website or going to Craigslist or something, we go where the fish are. And people who are looking for jobs or professionals
Yeah.
go to PA.
Okay, touching on something that Mrs. Bites brought up, I just kind of dismissed this idea that we'd go through job description by job description. You guys, the administration doesn't have any, you don't think that would be worth it, right?
That's what I thought we were.
Oh, you thought we were going to do that, going through item by item and looking at each of them. Is that something you want to do?
No.
Okay,
But I-
or do you think there's
Why
value?
don't we see how many
We
jobs
are
are
looking at
left?
job description for all the administrators, correct?
I wasn't,
Why don't we see how many jobs are left after they
okay, we can
the
do
cut
that.
and to make a decision?
The way I see it though, if we as
100?
committee
How many job
members,
descriptions can there be?
I mean, if you want to look at the administrators, we all want to look at what I don't want to do is have it like the policy committee where we sit here month after month looking through
I don't wanna-
item by item. If
I
we
want-
have an interest in administrators, all of us, well, let's
I
look
think-
this
I
month.
don't think
It would be
we
a
should
good
be
idea to
changing
have
them. I think we should just review them.
Administrator job description for the simple reason, if you're gonna cap an elementary school principal at this level of money, we ought to know. what they're required to
exactly
do.
are those duties?
Okay,
Now, I can't see having, going over a job description for every middle
extracurricular,
school
yeah.
teacher.
I don't think
All right.
we should, but I think that should be in place.
No, I mean, especially if
just
we're
sign
talking,
off on it.
seeing as the Act 93 agreement is coming up for discussion, that would be a salient point to discuss.
All right.
Sure, I can work that into the calendar here. We can talk about, we can look at those administrator
It
positions.
could be a meeting or two or homework for us to review.
Well, that's what I'm
I think
thinking.
the
I
work is
prefer
gonna
it.
be the administrators.
If we can make it homework, I think that, like, really, if anybody wants to talk about any position, so if you go home and you look up all the administrators and say, hey, look, there's some discrepancies here, then we'll talk about it. But I just don't want to kind of force
We're
it.
just advising consent on that, honestly. I see it like Congress. We're just advising consent.
Well, Congress also
There.
makes this stuff.
They need to create it and own it and run with it.
Well, sure, but the reason, the reasons this committee was created is for that oversight, really, which is also a
And
function of
that's why
Congress.
I want to make sure it's done.
Yeah.
Because I want to oversee it.
Well, that's what I'm saying about these job
I wanna
descriptions.
oversee
I
it.
just want to make sure that there isn't overlap, and I want to make sure that it's clean.
Right.
And the reason why I feel like we need to step in a little bit is because over the years, I mean, there's job descriptions, one of them on there is somebody whose job is to make photocopies. And I don't think we've had that job for a while, or at least I hope we haven't.
agree.
I hope there's not a staff photocopier still on staff, but,
Push the button with your left hand.
yeah.
Although office clerical duties should be on there.
Right.
Maybe not
Every
photocopying.
job description is as described by the supervisor, whether
Yeah.
it's the superintendent.
All other duties.
Well, but even there, but no, no, no.
Leeway.
Well,
I still
absolutely,
want
but
that.
what happens there too, like, we need to articulate, I think, what the core competencies of the job
Exactly.
are, because then, like we said earlier, people are assigned tasks and they leave, and then, well, what do we do?
Competency should be laid out.
But, okay,
That happened when we contracted out the custodial in Robin, I was there with the principal, and I said, is there anything that your custodians do that is unique to your building that isn't really custodial? They go, oh, no. They left. All of a sudden, no one updated their marquees anymore, their sign.
There
You
you
know,
go.
remember that? I was
Right.
like, I asked you, is
There you
there
go.
anything they do that's unique that
There you
isn't
go.
really part of their job?
There you-
No. The moment they all leave, oh, who's gonna update our signs? I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I asked.
because you need to work that into the
Who's gonna raise
contract.
and lower the flag?
Right, who's gonna-
We've been wondering that for years.
There were all these things that these people did, and no one knew they
You
did.
gotta leave that in there, for sure.
I said, is Joe in your building going above and beyond that you don't know?
Yep.
And they were like, no.
And that's why it needs to be in the job description,
Right.
so,
And nobody's
Going against
suggesting we
Rob
take
there.
out as described by your supervisor.
No.
either. We still want that in there.
but we
Let's be
want
clear.
it to be as
But
comprehensive,
the core competencies,
Yeah.
I like the way you said
I know
that.
what you're
so,
saying.
all
Yeah,
right.
so please start thinking about that, and, I think if it's not tomorrow, we want to give them plenty of time to do these things thoughtfully.
Okay, well, I never said that we moved on to topics from the floor, but I think that's kind of what that was. We kind of talked about a lot of things there. Are there any other topics that we want to bring up that we haven't touched on yet?
Ask for public comment.
We'll get there, not quite yet. Because I have something I want to bring up under topics from the floor. The staff survey that we were going to see. Can you send that out?
I sent it to Amy, who's working with Scott. They're going to send it out under the guise of the.
Oh, so wait, is this the survey that you already administered? Because if it's a new one, I mean, there are some things on there, like questions that I'd like answers to.
Well, they're going to tweak it, and Scott and me were going to get together. This was about a week ago. I haven't talked to either of them in a couple of days. Because we wanted the union to send it out because people were afraid to answer.
Understood there, but I know we talked about this in the committee and we never had a resolution, and we don't have the authority of the board, and I'm speaking only as one of 9. I object to that because this is a function of the district, and we're trying to figure out they're our employees, and by ceding some of that authority to the union, or not even authority, but by telling the union that, hey, our folks don't trust us, but they trust you, I just don't think that is a good practice. And if our employees are uncomfortable taking a survey, well, then their opinion, I
Yeah,
guess.
I'm not sure we directed them one way or the other. I'm with the same mentality. I feel like we should ask them and see what the response is. Like 50% response to a survey is a good response.
Well, I'm specifically talking about the,
Staff
the union.
survey. I'm saying who it comes from.
I have the results back. I can get it from Scott.
That's what I was expecting,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, can we see that?
I didn't think we were doing a new survey, because I have a whole lot of questions I'd like to put on a staff survey.
But I agree with Connor that if they don't want to voice their opinion to us, then they don't want to voice their opinion.
Yeah, I say so be it. It's
Yeah.
out of
This
state.
that's pretty common though in districts.
Yeah.
The teachers are always afraid of reprisals.
That's something, we talked about
We
this
did
at the
talk
last
about
meeting,
that.
like, it's silly. I mean, we don't even know,
It's pretty common.
we can't do anything anyway. If we don't like what Joe Schmo has to say, well, what can we do?
He always thinks he's gonna get back to them.
No, I mean, that's,
a union mentality. retaliation.
Well, that's a conspiracy theory, is what it
It's also-
is, so.
It seems to be.
They're
a
afraid of
bamboo
things getting
school
back to their
district
union.
mentality.
No.
Is that what you
Jim,
think?
you have a bunch of people that won't run for the board because they've got kids in school and they're afraid of retaliation.
Right.
It is a real fear, though.
It's a fear, but it's an unfounded
Maybe it
one.
shouldn't be, but it
But it's
is.
pretty common.
Yeah.
It's pretty common, and I've seen it in schools before where the principal says, I wanna know who said that, because then they start discrediting
There
that
is,
person.
yeah.
It's pretty common.
So I'm with, anyway,
It's not unique to here.
the thing is, we need to find out, so if we need to do it
And I
that way,
can
then
get
I.
it for Scott. He had it aggravated away. I couldn't even read the darn thing.
Hmm.
It was all his data.
Was that the thing you wanted to bring up?
That was the one thing, because my expectation was that we'd be getting that information so we could discuss it sooner rather than later. So if you can just get that information once it's translated.
So what you're saying is you're talking about another survey that you're sending out.
Yeah, so that we can probably, I mean, we haven't worked through the questions yet. It's just a
Okay.
matter of.
Oh.
All right, yeah, but we
Okay,
can
so
see
it's
the
still
one that you
conceptual.
did.
If we're going to send out new questions, I absolutely want to talk about that in this committee because I have a lot of questions that I'd like answered from our staff. But anyway, that's all I have from topics from the floor. Anything else from committee members? Okay. Public comment? Thanks for bringing that up. No public comment. Meeting adjourned if there's no objection at 8:23.